This is a big hand today. Some of y'all, if you don't have a fork in your hand, you can clap louder than that. Come on, give them a hand. Why don't you do that, please? We appreciate them and appreciate all of you. Now let's give our culinary arts team a big, big hand for today. I don't know, there's Deborah. Come on, they're back there. Give them another hand. They're so special, always delightful, always delicious, and always absolutely on top in terms of kingdom class, and we appreciate that. And we want to thank Shelley. Thank you for our 360 red carpet experience. Give Shelley Fair a big hand. We appreciate that. And Crystal, thank you so very much. Give Crystal a hand as well, helping to coordinate this. We certainly thank her, and thank you, Tanya, and all of you who have served to make this happen. Our hostesses today, and all of you who have helped. And then thank you for showing up to eat, meet, greet, and to celebrate. I am honored to have the opportunity, of course, to have a little dialogue with our honorees in your presence. We're going to all have a little talk. Y'all good with that? All right. I'm excited because there's always a story behind glory. Yeah. I said, there's always a story behind glory. Okay, this side of it is acting Presbyterian. Come on, let's say it together. There's always a story. There's always a story behind glory. Behind glory. Yes, and so we're excited today because we've got two individuals who have reached a milestone that is uncommon. And because of that, we know at the COF, we don't treat the common like it's uncommon. And we know there's a story behind their glory. I am honored today to have this conversation with the GM of Radio 1 Houston, Miss Pamela McKay. Come on, give her a big hand. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And of course, to my left, the anointed uncle, brother, Dr. Deacon.
all of the above.
All of the above, Larry Jones. Come on, give him a hand. Excited, and Pam, I'm going to start with you. Just introduce your family members who are here, if you don't.
I would love to do that. I have my amazing husband, Mr. Robert McKay.
Hey, Bob.
Of 30 years, married. And my absolutely adorable, loving, amazing, every other word I could use, triplets, Carson McKay, Kendall McKay, and Camille McKay. Yay! And then I have my oldest daughter, who I do not want to leave out. She actually lives in Los Angeles, my 28-year-old daughter, Kellen.
All right, wonderful. She lives in L.A. Wonderful. And Larry, introduce your crew who's here.
Oh, my one and only. The fabulous Miss Charlene, everybody. Wife of 21 years and Bishop's crawfish partner.
That's my, yes indeed. Boy. Yes indeed. Can't wait to crawfish season. We have a ball. I'm praying that they come in early, and they come in right. You know, that's my prayer, man. Because I taste God every time I eat crawfish.
It's true on that one.
Always special. Honored to be here and to have you all here. And the 2022 Hall of Fame class for radio. The truth of the matter is, most of us don't know a lot about the Radio Hall of Fame, and that probably has something to do with the fact that we've never had people we know who's been inducted into it. Tell us a little bit about the Radio Hall of Fame and you know, how seldom is it that someone who looks like us ends up inducted?
Well, I would say to start with is that the radio industry in general, there are not a ton of people who look like us in the positions that we hold. Even in urban radio, which we work in right now, which you would assume would be largely populated by people who look like us, that's not necessarily the case. So when the Hall of Fame nominations come out, those are nominations from in the field of people who actually work in the industry. So it tends to be a popularity contest, and they tend to vote for people who look like them. Okay, no matter what our body of work may have said, the nominations don't definitely, or the votes, and even though, like Larry said, he's been nominated 7 times, I was nominated twice, the votes didn't come our way, even though our body of work way outspanned what anybody else on the slate had done. So this year, we were talking, and I told Larry, and I said, you know what, especially for you, if it does not work this year, we're going to start our own Radio Hall of Fame. because it's obvious that they do not value what we do. And with God's blessing, this year, we were nominated, and we got a lot of support from our team at Radio 1 and from some of our peers in the business, and we're actually inducted this November.
So this is groundbreaking. This is pioneering. And Larry, how long you been in the radio business?
January will start my 50th year in the business.
Wow, 50 years. All right. Now, I mean, that's you just said a lot.
Yes, sir.
Okay. How did you end up in radio? How did you get started?
Truth. I was studying at Alabama State University that has no communication school, no communications class. I was, my degree is in political science. I designed myself to get that background, Bishop, so I could run for city council, and little did I know, it was a dream. But I wanted to be on city council to rewrite a personal wrong.
Wow.
State of Alabama had, and if you've traveled through that place, and I hope you don't have to go there a lot any time in your life, Interstate 65, when you get to Montgomery, just before you take 85 to go to Atlanta, there's an embankment. My grandmother's house was on that embankment. When we grew up, it was a street. It was 1221 Tatum Street. It was a flourishing Black Wall Street neighborhood within itself, with a garage, a sweet shop, lounges, bars, sandwich shops, because it was right next door to Alabama State University. So this was, as a shorty, I could walk from my grandmother's house on campus. My dad taught psychology, and I was in kindergarten on campus, because it was Alabama State's a lab, teachers college. So all of the members of the faculty, students, children, were basically lab rats. The teachers they used us to teach. Yeah, you were getting your degree in education, I was your student. So you taught me, and I am one of the faculty students, children. So the whole thing was a bizarre state of mental depression, and I just lost my mind. And I said, I'm going back to Montgomery, and I'm going to get on city council. I'm going to write, and we're going to tear up some white people's neighborhood, and just like y'all told my grandmother. So with that crazy idea in mind, I went to a public speaking class, and the young lady asked for an impromptu speech. And excuse me when I stutter, because that means I'm extremely excited and very passionate about this, because Bishop has already hit home on the beginning, but this is how it started. I go into class, she says, give an impromptu speech. I am a self-proclaimed nomad. I just travel the world. I don't have any, I'd roam. So my mind went free, and I did this whole impromptu, and the class lost their mind, and after class, the instructor called me up. She says, Larry, have you ever thought about radio or television? I said, no, ma'am. She said, you've never thought about radio? I said, well, you're in the band, you're a drum major, you play music. I said, no. City council fixed my grandmother's street, fixed y'all for tearing up my grandmother's street. And she said, I think you could do radio or television. She planted a seed. I said, okay. She says, no, better than okay. There's an audition for campus announcer. I'm going to walk you over to the classroom, fill out the paperwork with you, and you're going to do the audition tomorrow morning. I went and did the audition. That next day, I became on-campus announcer, and there was a Founders Day program a couple of months later. I did the program on stage. There was a local announcer in the audience, graduate of Alabama State. He flagged me down after the program, and he said, come here. He said, I think you can do this. I said, do what? He said, I think you can do the radio. I said, okay. He said, no, it's a small black AM station. If you know, limited signal, and we sign off at night or whenever the sun goes down during the winter seasons. But in the summer, because it's more light, we stay a little longer. And there's a 2-hour window. So that's what I want you to go do, audition for that position. So here's the nutty. And here's a thing that Bishop has preached on and helped me get through on that moment when it's really your time and you don't know it's your time, but here it is, a kid who really behind a mic or in a uniform or in front of tens of thousands of people, I'm bulletproof. But in here, right now, I'm a shy, scared little boy and the lowest of low self-esteem. And I'm having this moment in the dormitory before I get in my car to go downtown, which was catty-corner to Dexter Avenue Baptist Church on another story at 211 Dexter downtown. And I'm like, what? And I parked my car and I sat, Miss Tanya, probably as close as you and I sat and I just panicked. I said, do I get out and go? Or do I go back to the dormitory? This is my education to radio, folks. You ain't heard no classes, none of that, right? Zero. So, Tanya, I got up enough nerve to get out the car. I go into the radio station, and the general manager, the receptionist, other radio personalities, oh, you must be that guy Jack told us about. Come on, we got something for you in the back. They gave me 3 commercials to read in a production room that didn't work. So they said. All right? So I've always been a curious kid. Well, I wish Miss Rose was here to tell you that story. But so I looked, and I've always had a good eye. I said, this ain't broke. Y'all unplugged it. All right, trick 1. So I plug in the production board, not really knowing exactly what I'm doing, but I chopped up a little commercial and got it done. And the first thing they did when I came, oh, you found the plug. All right. Why we got to be tricksters? But here we are. All right, so, all right, Larry, the next, you're on next. And I go in, and I do what I do, and here's another heartbreaker, because at that time we had the National Black Network News, came at the top of the hour. The short story is I read 3 commercials, I got the job. The funny part about the survival is they purposely set the clock, second hand of the clock back 15 seconds. So if you're in a studio and you've always wondered why things happen at always the top of the hour, that's when your network breaks, that's when the commercials run, that's when things happen. So this news feed was supposed to come down at the top of the hour, which legally then we had to play a top of the hour ID for station identification, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going and I'm rocking, and then boom, and I timed it up perfect. And the tick, 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 and and there's dead air, and I'm sweating up a storm. I flip the mic back on, I grab something to read, and 10 after the hour, there's a tone. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, welcome to Mutual Black Network News. They're all outside laughing their behinds off because they had never heard anyone with enough guts and stick-to-itiveness to figure out the clock was slow. I talked my way up for 15 seconds so the news came back on, and I've been doing that since 1973. So here I am. That's how I got started.
So thank you for giving us some inside radio studio secrets.
Man.
So let me just ask, and Ms. Pam, you are the GM
Yes,
and the president at Radio 1.
yes.
How did you end up there from where you started?
Well, honestly, my career by traditional radio standards is a little odd. I started out here in 1991 as an account executive at KPRC Radio, which is a small AM station, and worked my way up, became a manager in 1994, and then continued to move up the ladder at varying levels of management. And then in 2001, when I became pregnant with these 3 beautiful little people, it was tough because our company was going through a merger at the time. And when I talked about earlier how there are not a lot of people who look like us, it's because they tend to choose, again, the people who look like them. Always. So as the merger was happening, and the fact that I was pregnant and needing to go out on maternity leave and having complications, it was kind of like an out for them to say, maybe you should step back and be an account executive, not be a manager right now, okay? Which was code for, we're trying to figure out how to move you out of here. So me, I prayed about it. I talked to my mom and dad about it, talked to our pastor about it. And in my mind, I thought, you know what, my kids are gonna need me because they were born early. They were born 10 weeks early. Carson was 2 pounds, 12 ounces. Kendall was 2 pounds, 12 ounces. And Camille was 1 pound, 3 ounces. So they had a long way to go to get healthy and come home. So I knew my kids were going to need me. So in my head, I said, you know what you're giving me is a pathway to be able to go home and take care of my children. So I agreed, and I stepped back, and I became an account executive again, which means I was now reporting to the people who used to be my peers. But the other thing I also knew is that when I did step back, they were going to see exactly how much they needed me. Because I knew I brought a very specific skill set to the table that they didn't have. So I saw it as a win for me. Whereas other people may have seen it differently, I saw it as a win for me. So I stepped back, and I became an account executive for all of 8 months. But by this time, my kids had come home from the NICU. They were home doing great. So when the rubber really hit the road and they realized, we kind of need Pam to be able to move this thing forward. When they called to say to come back, well, I went back, but I went back at a level up. And then so I've been fortunate during my career as well to break some barriers, I guess is the best way to put it. I was a general sales manager, which in our business means you run the operations for one sales department for one radio station, just the sales department. And I had gotten to a point where I felt like I wanted larger responsibility and something more to do. Went to my boss several times. Opportunities come up, didn't come my way. So I finally came to a point and I said, listen, I either will get an opportunity here or I'll go find an opportunity someplace else. So we started talking about it, and I interviewed with a couple of the clusters within the company. Went to one in Tampa, one in DC, got close but didn't get it. In my mind, I thought, when you made this message earlier, it made me harken back to this, but in my mind, I thought, failure on my part. You know, I went out, I didn't get it, failure on my part. But what I didn't know was that God had something better down the road. Because I ended up getting a promotion and was the first time ever in the company that they promoted someone from being a general sales manager, which means you over sales for one station, to being the vice president general manager, which means I was over all of the operations for 8 stations. And it was the first time that ever, because normally you go a step up before you do that. And then, so I did that. The other opportunity I've had was when I came to work at the job that I absolutely love more than any other job I've ever had in radio, when I came to be vice president general manager for Radio 1, this is the first time there has been an African-American female to sit in that seat.
Yes, ma'am.
And so those were 2 times that within my career, and the one time when I thought it was failure on my part, and I thought maybe I should quit, it was other people's prayers for me to understand that God has something better on down the road for me.
Wow. Radio is not an easy business, right? You know, in the capacities that both of you, you're on air, of course, and you're running business operations. Barry, how has the conversation changed in terms of, you know, you've been in radio for 50 years.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, for the last 20, 30 years, compared to right now, in terms of our social context, how has that changed in terms of the people you talk to now who are in tuned to what's happening in our community as opposed to those who may not really understand where we are?
Good question, Bishop. Everyone who has a cell phone, hold it up, please. I want you to know that used to be my AM/FM transistor radio. And you may be young enough to remember that. That's how we consumed what we all consume now, except it didn't have all the extra options that everybody has now. You only had us for your sports. You only had us for your news. You only had us for your commentary, your opinionated shows. Your Sundays were littered with community service shows that are now podcasts where you get to voice your opinion. So the biggest change, Bishop, is in technology. Basically, I've learned that if people are hungry or in need of a service, the message is still the same. And that's how we were able to say, if you're in need of food on a Wednesday, the community of faith with compassion, compassion action is available, and the streets are flooded. There's a line around this building. The differences are maybe there are fewer communicators, men and women who studied the craft like Ms. Pam and I, who had to go to the woodshed to get it right. There are things that I didn't know. My first job, I had two lines, 950 W-R-A, M-A. Now, what's wrong with that statement, he says? Not much if you kind of just casually listening. But he said W-R-A, and the hotline flashed. And the program director says, you don't hear it, but I'm about to help you. One of the first best lessons I ever received. It's W-R-M-A, not aura. I said, fine. And for 15 minutes on the half hour and a quarter, that's all I could say. 950 W-R-M-A. And it's W, not W. So you learn, Bishop, and then there are training classes, and you glean from good folk like Miss Pam and Bob, her husband, top-notch seller for eons. He's one of the best in the business. But as a communicator and a kid who just loved radio, consumed still that, a junkie, I want to learn how to sell, all right? Because the top sellers on air are those who can convey the salesperson's message from the client to a live radio audience with that passion, that follow-up, that attention to detail, that gift of gab.
Yeah.
Communicators. So those are the things that I say we may be missing just a little bit, but it's a passion of mine to make sure we find communicators in this next arena. But that phone and those options, when I'm not playing your favorite song, you go right to Spotify, you go right to YouTube, you go right to XM satellite radio, and I'm right there with you because I don't play my favorite song either. But I get it. But that's one of our biggest challenges, Bishop. Yeah.
So in terms of the social challenges we have today, we had, of course, Letitia Plummer was here earlier, and she's the city councilwoman. We got two candidates here. We're finding it more and more difficult to find enough people who are competent, capable, and conscientious about our community to speak and to run for office and to take leadership. What do you see on the horizon in terms of the lack thereof, or is there some hidden group of people? We're waiting on the next leadership tier to emerge, who understand socially what we're dealing with and who can connect with mediums like yours to help keep our message there.
I think a lot of it goes back to what we were talking about earlier at the table, that where a lot of that foundation came from within the church and growing up in the church, we've lost a lot of that. When we talked about, we were having a conversation a few weeks ago about how young black children used to be able to speak so well so early, and it was because the Easter pageants at church. They had to speak in public, right? You had to learn your Easter speech. And so a lot of those skills that they learned early in the church don't necessarily happen anymore. And so I think a lot of the work that you're currently doing and bringing that message back, I think it has to do with us making sure that we make sure that our children understand the history of where we come from and the history of the struggle that has happened within our community, because if you know that, you're gonna wanna do something. If you really know it and you really understand it, you will want to do something. So it really behooves all of us. We've got to make sure that we are doing things, like I said, a lot of the work that you're doing, a lot of the work that we plan to do with you, is that we have to make sure that our young people really understand the foundation of the African American experience and what that took, the sacrifice that was made, sacrifices that are still currently being made, and the sacrifices that are gonna have to be made later.
You said sacrifice. Okay. that word stood out for me, sacrifice. You would not obviously be where you are, either of you, had you not made some sacrifices, right? And it seems that sacrifice is sort of a disappearing concept. People want instant gratification and promotion because they look good. You know, I'm cute, so promote me, right? And this sense of entitlement. How hard is it to stay in this industry, or in any industry, of course in yours in particular? How hard has it been? What are some of the challenges that you face? I'll ask you and then Larry, comment on that, please.
Well, in answer to how you stay in, I think I know you've got to have a good, I call them your personal board of directors. And these are the people that when you need to make a decision that you're not on sure footing with, you consult those people. My husband, different things I go to my kids, my dad, my mom, my brothers, a couple of good friends. And when I have a decision that needs to be made that I'm really not on sure footing with, I'll ask them. The thing that I'll say about having a personal board of directors, though, is it can't be just the people that are going to bobblehead whatever you say. Hey, Bishop, I want to do so-and-so. That sounds great. It's got to be the people that'll say, listen, I don't think that's a good idea, and here's the reason why. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to change what you're going to decide to do, but at least they're open to and giving you a difference of opinion and a fair assessment of what they think that decision is going to do for you. And I think that you've got to have a strong faith. You just really do. Because there are decisions that have to be made sometimes that are really, really tough. And Bob will tell you, there's been nights when I've had to go in and fire 32 people in one day. Not fire because they didn't do anything wrong. Lay off 32 people in one day. I could not sleep all night long. Now, honestly, I can fire you with no problem because that means I've given you 10 chances to get things right. But that may sound cold, but I've given you, and I've talked to you, and I've counseled you, and I've asked, what can I do? I've done everything possible before we get to that point. But laying someone off for me is really, really hard. It hits me hard. I can't sleep. It's probably weak, but I cry afterwards because it's really hard because you impact someone's life. And you think about that person's got to now go home and tell their children and their wife or husband, I don't have a job. And for some people, week to week, that's a big thing. So you've got to have a strong faith that will allow you to make decisions and do things that you know are right, but be able to move on past it. But the only way you can do that is that God knows my heart. And he knows that what decision I'm making is a business decision and it's not personal.
Larry, you went through some challenging times a few years back and rebounded.
Which one? you know them all. Where should I start?
I know, a number of just tell us how you were able to rebound and get back to where you are at another level.
Okay, so that would be the graduation party of 2010 from the nationally syndicated Yolanda Adams morning show. And I was walked into the general manager's office at that time with a then...
That was not me, by the way.
No, I'm not even close. After initially launching that show in 06 with Yolanda, getting Marcus hired, having AV hired, having a great team around us, and we went across the country spreading the good news. So 2010, I was ushered in, and the words out of the then general manager's mouth were, I'm not firing you, but corporate has made a decision, and it's over my pay scale, and I am releasing you. Now, I work with a group of young men at the lieutenant's house that you both met, Lieutenant Fields. This very same day, I'm going to give a graduation speech to these young men who have been incarcerated and have now graduated, and they're going back into society to perform. So I'm sitting at the elevator, Bishop, and I'm contemplating. I've been released, and I got to go encourage these young men, Bob, and I got to call Charlene and tell her that I don't have a job anymore. So I thought. Back to your message today. So I'm in the elevator, my programmer, Terry, standing next to me. She's crying, and I'm sitting in front. I'm looking at the numbers on the elevator, and I'm like, don't worry about it, kid. God's got something else for me. Don't worry about it. I don't even know if I believe that, Miss Crystal, but I knew enough. I had enough church in me, to say it, right? So I'm like, oh, okay, Lord, for real, we got to do this. So I'm downstairs and I'm nervous because I'm like, it's like being disconnected from your family because you spend all of your time with these guys. And we travel the world with this show. And I thought we were doing really well. And we were doing well. It was just that they didn't need me anymore. Me. Okay, fine. So Bishop, to rebound what I did, I finished the assignment because we finished what we started, right? So I go speak to the young men, and I got to call Miss Charlene and say, hey, babe, I was released today from Yolanda's show. Of course, if you have any family from Fifth Ward, Texas, or graduated from Wheatley High School, you know the words that came out of her mouth immediately after that announcement. She said, I don't work for them. I can say what I wanted to say. So I know I made a call to you, and you encouraged me, and those are nice things, but you ain't got no money coming in, so now what? And one of the unique things about this rebound, in another part of the book that Bishop's about to help me put together, is a $25 testimony. It was a prayer. I'm working with Lieutenant now. I'm serving God. I'm still in the community, and we're working. Not radio, but we're working. And I'm down to my last $25. One of the men of faith that I followed at the time had a seminar out by JFK, and I walked in to him and I said, Doc, I got $25. Will you pray for me and my family? He said, come on in the room, son. Introduced me, did all the nine. He said, I want all y'all to stand up and tell Larry what he needs to do. Go home and tell the Holy Spirit what you want. Now, I had enough church, but I ain't never heard that in my life. I didn't know I could tell the Holy Spirit anything. But that's what he's here for. So, and Charlene can testify to this. On the rebound, I tied my $25. I go home. Next morning, I'm in the shower. What prayer? I don't know a prayer. I never said that out loud. On the rebound. All right. Let me see. Lord, okay, how about this? Father, whisper my name in someone's ear who needs my gift, my talents, my services, not to take anything away from anybody else, but to let me provide for me and my family. In the shower. Same prayer I prayed again this morning. Charlene said, your phone's been blowing up while I'm in the shower. She said, okay. So I answered the phone. It's Greg Lyons, who was then a record rep for Matthew Knowles' Gospel World. Greg is a dear friend. He said, Larry, Matthew called. We just did 2 spots for Trinity 5-7. They're coming back out. And Matthew was furious. He didn't like it. And I said, I got a guy. Let's call Larry. I hadn't talked to Greg in months. I said, what do you need? He said, I need a 60-second spot and a 30-second spot for 25/7. Okay. I said, send me the track, send me the script, and we'll get it cut. I don't have a studio, Bishop. This is the rebound story. I don't have a studio, all right? My friend Mark Fisher has a studio, but where does Mark live? I live in Spring. Mark lives in Richmond. Exactly an Obama trip. 44 miles from my house to his house. I'm doing 88 miles a day with really no income. We cut the spot. Matthew goes crazy. They love it. I said, oh, by the way, how much does this pay? He said, $2,500. On a $25 seed, my first spot. I'm glad y'all caught up with it. Seriously. And my first tithe was $250 to the house. But it didn't stop there. It only got better. And this is the rebound. You asked me how I got back. So now, Matthew's excited. New York's excited. Anybody remember the TV show Sunday's Best? Yes. The winner from Sunday's Best got a deal with Matthew's record label, also had their product put into Walmart. who is doing the voice for the commercials for Walmart. And the spots ran on Magic 102 and the old Praise 92.1. So whose voice is being heard again all over the radio? Rebound, Bishop. But I'm not employed by them anymore. I'm just doing what I do every day. So this is 6 months, ma'am, 8 months, we're rolling. The young lady that took me down in the elevator called me. She says, why do I hear your voice now more on Praise and Magic than I ever? I said, ma'am, I'm just doing what I do. I read. So she said, what are you doing the weekend? I said, what do you need? She said, well, I have a Saturday and Sunday opening on the weekend and possibly some swing time, which means I would fill in for Candy or Marco or Jeff Harrison at the time. And she said, yeah, sure, you know, I get to do what I do and do that too. So we're on. Now, I'm not originally from Acres Homes. I'm not even originally from Houston, but I know enough that when you let my foot back in that door, it's over. I'm like, not only full-time job, six-figure salary, I'm running back in this thing and I'm flying, but I don't get it yet, Bishop. But I do my due diligence. Remember when Candy discovered she had breast cancer and she had to go in for surgery? Who worked 40 days in a row for Candy and did his other shifts and did all of his endorsements? It was me. A, love for my sister, B, love for what I do, but it was a call. How bad do you want it? I'm gonna run you raggedy. You're gonna do all this stuff. I said, run me. I ain't scared of none of y'all. That's what I do. Yeah. So the bounce back, Bishop, was A, consulting with you, having enough church to know that God will see me through. In that I understood. Yeah. Developing enough confidence to tell the Holy Spirit what I want, that I expect it, and I am going to get it. I'm the right man for the job. I'm the best person in the world. That's how I became the voice of the community of faith. Yeah. Avery called me one day and he said, man, Bishop is losing his mind. Are you available to read for the church? I said, it is an honor and a pleasure. And oh, by the way, here's my invoice. And he says, oh, by the way, here's your check. And I'm like, here we are. Yeah. So the bounce back, the community of faith, and have a man of God that will sow just enough seed in you to let you do what you already know what you're supposed to do. He didn't put hands on me, all that old. He just said what he said. Larry, read, because that's what you do. And that's how I got back.
I want to say today how inspiring both of you are, and how powerful your testimonies and stories are. The fact that you've had many firsts as a black woman and continue to pioneer, and the fact that you are giving others their opportunity for their first. Because what I know about both of you from observation is that you've never closed a door behind you. Whenever God lets you into a place, you keep the door open for others. And I want to commend both of you for that, and for your professional acumen. And then finally, let me say this. The community of faith is proud that you allow us access to the platforms that you both have in order that we can continue to impact the world around us through our ministry and our mission. Let's celebrate Miss Pamela McKay and Brother Uncle Funky Larry Deacon. Dr. Jones. Right. All right. Yes. Let's get a photo here. Okay, would y'all give them one more hand, and then let's celebrate everybody in this room. Come on, clap for it. If you were you inspired today? I want you to pray for them, pray for their work, pray for their families, pray for their careers to continue to flourish. And I want to say this to every young person in this room, everybody here who's under 25, like me, lift your hand. All the young people with me, lift your hand. Come on, if you're under 25 or under, lift your hand. Keep it up. Here's what I want to say to you. that very, very, very sincerely, please don't settle for less than your dream. Please don't settle for less than your dream. And listen, don't limit your potential to other people's predicaments. And the level of your opposition is only an indication of how big your opportunities are. When I listen to your stories, and you know, we've talked a lot, and but I hear something resonating in your voice. There's a seasoning and a solidness that only comes after you've come through some things. And if I can just speak this word over your lives in the hearing of these 25 and younger, I want y'all to really hear me. If you're 25 and younger, choose models like these to inspire you, because this level of success has paid a price. You can be talented, but being talented and anointed are different.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
There are some doors talent can get you in, but there are other doors only anointing gets you in. But anointing only comes through crushing. The olive oil that produces the oil for anointing only comes when that olive is crushed. And so the value of the olive increases the more it's crushed. And so as we sit next to you and listen to you, what we're really hearing is the story of someone who's been crushed enough that now the oil flows. And the oil flows, and anyone who gets close enough to you, they receive the spillover from that oil. They hear it, they see it, they're inspired by it. So thank you for sharing some of that with us today. And I'm hopeful that somebody else, including me, will leave this place saying, you know what? I'm anointed for that. I'm going higher because my anointing demands I not settle. I'm too anointed to accept defeat. I'm too anointed to allow people to push me down and keep me out. No door has a lock on it strong enough to keep an anointed person out of it. Thank God for this anointed woman, this anointed man who's broken barriers and setting a standard higher for others to come. Give him one more hand, won't you? Now, I want our youth to come and take a picture with them very quickly, yes.
Can I have just a moment with these?
Hold on one second. Come on, youth, come on. Yeah. Shh.
Roy Hamilton would have said to each one of you, come on, children, stand around. I want you to hear this. Stand around. You would know Roy Hamilton. And some of these young